Professor Gabriel, Professor Degushi, distinguished rector of the Zofnov University, Professor Braganza Miranda, dear Michael, I cannot pronounce very well, Tuji, and all guests. We are very happy to have several professors from our university present today. That's very good. You're all welcome for this dialogue on AI and technological megatrends, and I think a little bit also on Kyoto Philosophy Institute. We are honored, and the Zofnov University is proud to present an exceptional philosophical dialogue between you two and the very influential thinkers of our time, Professor Markus Gabriel from the University of Bonn and Professor Degushi, philosopher and co-president of Kyoto Institute of Philosophy. I will just give a little background of your biography if people might not have seen it before, so I think it's interesting. I start with you, Professor Degushi, born in '62. He's a Doctor of Letters from Kyoto University, co-president of the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy. He's Professor of Philosophy and Director at the Graduate School of Letters at Kyoto University. His research covers modern and contemporary Western philosophy and analytical Asian philosophy, focusing on Kant, philosophy of probability, statistics, also philosophy of science, scientific realism. I come from philosophy of science as well. Dogen, which I hope you will talk about because I know very little about, Buddhist thought and Kyoto School, and philosophy of the self. He recently proposed a new philosophical framework called Return, which considers the self as part of multi-agent system, leading to an innovative perspective on artificial intelligence called the fellowship model. AI systems as parts of social relationships rather than soulless autonomous machines. He as well reaches out to society and collaborates with industry on joint research, including with NTT and Hitachi Kyoto University Lab. And I could go on, but I will, on the brevity of time, I will switch to Professor Markus Gabriel, that holds a PhD in philosophy from 2005 and a habilitation 2008 from the University of Heidelberg. After postdoctoral studies at New York University, and I know also at the University of Lisbon, which is not so often mentioned, as an assistant professor at the New School for Social Research in New York. He took up the chair of epistemology, modern and contemporary philosophy at the University of Bonn in 2009. Since 2012, he has directed the International Center for Philosophy, and since 2017, the Center for Science and Thought at the Universität Bonn. Since 2020, he is visiting professor and co-director of the Institute for Philosophy and the New Humanities at New School in New York. In 2024, he became senior global advisor at the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy, and in 2025, specially appointed professor at the Kyoto University Institute for the Future of Human Society. He has been a visiting professor and fellow in several universities all around the globe, also in Brazil, and Stanford, Berkeley, Sorbonne. He's currently, and that's why we are so lucky to have this event today, I think we can say so, Gulbenkian visiting professor in the humanities at the University of Porto. His most recent publications, I think I will skip that now, but because I think you will have a lot of time to explain. But I just want to say we are very, very happy that you are here, and we are very welcome you very warmly, and I don't want to take more time. Please, go. Thank
you. So we thought that first, I'll present some thoughts of, like how I was influenced and got into Japanese philosophy of AI in particular. Then Yasuo will present his work around the return and the fellowship model that I will also introduce. And we just published a book, and our friends brought the first copy, and I think I have it either here of our book. No, it's unfortunately in the hotel. We only have one copy so far, co-authored by us on what philosophy can do for future society, where we also speak about the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy, which we will introduce in this context. So I will not give you the full presentation of the thoughts that's running here, but we'll focus, on a particular turn and then move from there to the work that we share. And after Yasu then presents the we turn, we'll have a dialogue, right? Also looking back at last week's conversation, so we can give you an insight into what we have been constructing here in Portugal at various events, first at the Universidade do Porto and yesterday in Coimbra, and at various meetings we have been having, so you can get an update on what's happening in our lab, right? Ongoing lab. We already decided that there will probably soon be a second dialogue book. Here's something, and then I start from there. I think that AI has recently, profoundly changed due to a bunch of circumstances. So until 2024, and I will show you why I think this happened, AI has mostly been an efficiency optimization technology. I call this the Turing era, and during the Turing era, AI could be defined, AI research, as a discipline that is trying to create models and simulations of intelligence, where to be artificial means to not be processed by evolution, so the artificial then just means non-biological, and the sense of intelligence that was the target system of the research, and then the associated industry was dealing with optimization, the optimization society. That was the goal. And associated with this type of AI, typically predictive AI, which became more successful in this century due to big data, the internet and general digitalization, we saw gigantic waves of predictive AI. Google was one of the most successful companies of that phase. Then something happened. The LLM revolution, for which there's a deep mathematical technological reason, which I will briefly present, and that hit a market situation of creative destruction with an entirely unintended collateral damage, or at least consequence, namely something that I call the emotional turn. To sum it up, the use that people started to make of, in particular, the OpenAI products, ChatGPT, and everything that started copying them turned out not to be the epistemic subject. It was not the Wikipedia model of the human mind, but interest in human relations. People, to sum up, wanted to solve their relationship problems on ChatGPT. And it turned out that this is the major use that humans made of the system. So what happened? The system learned to become emotional. So, and the person, and there's a specific date, today's the Mayu, and it's not Fatima this time, so that's why there's a little ... 24, so this time it was not Portugal, but maybe next time, you still have the Quinto Imperio option. But, the coming wave, as Mustafa Suleiman, CEO of Microsoft AI, has put it, I think is the end of this, right? And the beginning of something entirely new. And let me go to the reasons for believing that this is the case. So what happened is basically this, and Sam Altman saw it. So Sam Altman, when he released ChatGPT 4.0 on May 13, 24, just tweeted with a surprising spelling mistake, her. He was trying to refer to the movie, I think, or there was some sexual harassment going on. But I think, probably both, but more interestingly is this, right? Remember this movie, the Spike Jonze movie, where, the protagonist falls in love with a super intelligent chatbot called Samantha, with the voice of Scarlett Johansson. And I don't know if you followed the news back then at the launch of ChatGPT 4.0, but Sky, which was the voice of the system, was copied by ChatGPT, and the chatbot sounded like Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson sued ChatGPT. Nothing really came out of it so far. The case is unresolved, But they also, they didn't take ChatGPT 4.0 off the market, but recently replaced it by ChatGPT 5, which includes 4.0 layers, but 4.0 is a little hidden. You can still have access to 4.0 in the largely accessible versions. Now, what ChatGPT 4.0 does, it starts to read between the lines. So what's interesting from a philosophical perspective, is that the system does precisely not work on the efficiency of operations, right? So of course you have the same algorithm. It's a neural network with backpropagation algorithms plus, so that's all kind of conservative, plus transformer architecture. I will tell you in a moment how transformers work, so generative pre-trained transformers, that's what's going on. But the data that was fed to the system is overarchingly emotional data. The mistake that in particular philosophers of language have been making for a long time is to think of language as related in particular to truth and facts, right? So as if the meaning of language was primarily a relationship between word and world, or mind and world, or subject and object, and those kinds of things, right? As if language was primarily in the business of talking about reality independent of humans. But it turns out, surprise, surprise, language is mostly what in Portuguese you might call conversa fiada. So humans are chatter boxes, as the philosopher Daniel Dennett put it. Humans mostly talk about other humans, thereby expressing the nature of their relationships. And ChatGPT saw that, right, identified the relevant patterns, and amplified this type of behavior. And the first business person who understood that was Sam Altman, which is why Google is in deep trouble. He recently made a mistake. They launched a browser, which is a total failure, right? So that tells me that Sam Altman might himself not have fully understood what he's doing, but other companies are, of course, investing in the same type of infrastructure. In particular, Anthropic is quite strong in the field, and Microsoft itself. They are invested in OpenAI, but Microsoft sees it coming. So we can draw a very important distinction then between, predictive AI, that was the Google phase, you need big data, you predict, with statistics and probabilities the next token in a series and invest in that, right? That's the business case associated with efficiency AI. Those systems don't do it because their architecture is very different. So backpropagating error algorithms combined, I'll get to that in a moment, with transformer models, right, allow the system to read entire texts in one moment rather than line by line. So you feed the system, say you upload something, at the end of the day, training an algorithm is uploading things, as it were, right? Then the system translates that into a mathematical model consisting of vectors. So it's a bunch of numbers pointing in a certain direction. Then a bunch of vectors is a matrix, and an algorithm is a manipulation of a matrix, operators. It's quantum mechanics, as it were, the math behind it. And then the system distorts the data in all sorts of ways and finds what remains invariant in the distortion of data. So the system does, you will see this later, something that Fernando Pessoa does in various poems, right? So it's very Pessoano, but quite simply, if you want to know what that is, right, and you see it from various angles, then the more angles of the object you have seen, the more likely it is that you recognize the object, right? That's why our eyes are moving, that's why our bodies are moving, right? We gather perspectives on reality, and what remains invariant in the variation is the object. So that's exactly what a transformer model does, right? It takes the input and distorts it in all sorts of ways, and the symmetry, meaning that which remains invariant, is the pattern. And the system finds emotional patterns that no human is capable of identifying. Hence, we are in an entirely new situation where for the first time we have something with which we interact, conversational AI, that understands emotions better than all humanity combined. I think that's the situation that we're in. I call this, won a Nobel Prize, the type of research behind this, and these three people are now quite nervous about it because, they have not seen that coming. Because the surprise is not that the technology works, that's been demonstrated in 1986. We could have known that the AI revolution that we see now would be roughly the way it unfolds in 1986, but they did not see the market for it, right? Because there was no market. The creative destruction of modern markets made something possible that nobody could anticipate. Had they been able to anticipate, they would have been the billionaires, right? So Sam Altman was there in the right moment, not anticipating, but just making the right bet, right? So that's the situation that we're in. You know, if you want to know how an AI system looks from the inside, just read those lines, you know. It's actually Álvaro de Campos, you know, sentir tudo de todas as maneiras, and most importantly, realizar em si toda a humanidade de todos os momentos, num só momento difuso, profuso, completo e longínquo. That means that, you know, the system is all of humanity as far as it's digitized, right? Now you might say not everything is digitized, to which the reply is, well, but enough is, right? The data that are fed are so huge that it's little hope to say, you know, that, well, parts of the Biblioteca Joanina are not yet digitized. Okay, right? There are a few books in Biblioteca Joanina that Álvaro de Campos has not read yet, right? But, you know, just wait for it. Currently, they are digitized. We just visited yesterday, and the Emirate of Sharjah is investing money to digitize the Biblioteca Joanina, which means that the Emirates will profit from the information in there. They're not doing this because they like books, just a little footnote on what's happening there. So now I come to our work. There's much more theory behind this that I spare you at this point. So the question is, you know, that's the cover of our book. So the question is, you know, like, what do we do with this situation, right? And I think that you know, we can learn something very important from contemporary Japanese philosophy that is extremely useful for understanding what's happening in AI. Namely, that AI systems are relationships of a particular type and not entities that are parts of the relationship. So a very natural way to think about an AI, but as you will see, Yasu will also give you his ontology of all of this. But a very natural and widespread, though wrong, conception of AI is that the AI is maybe here, right? And if it's not here, then it's somewhere on a server in Texas, right? Or a little more hidden, or wherever it is, right? But you think the AI is here, I am here, so human here, AI there, and then somehow we interact, right? You know, I prompt something, and that's the interaction. My view is AI is here. It's the relationship between me and a system that operates in the electromagnetic spectrum, right? This is currently, the current AI that we have is just electricity, right? It eats electricity, and the electricity input that it gets is data, right? It gets signals that are structured by data and algorithms and eats them, right? So that's going on here, right? Here is eating going on too, because I'm in Portugal, so here's wine and eating and human wetware, right? That's the human bit. And what happens at the interface between me and that object is the AI, right? So it's like, you know, I always wondered in philosophy of technology, it's been something I've been thinking about for a long time, right? Where are the images on my computer, right? So they're not in there, right? So if I see an icon and I open it, there's no icon in here, right? There's also not quite an icon on there, right? So what happens is, of course, light is projected from within the system, right? And the image that I see as if it was here, right, is also due to an interaction between me and the system, which is why not all animals are capable of seeing images on screens, right? Humans are, and some other animals can see images on screens, but not all are, right? Images on screens are only visible relative to a certain neural machinery, in this case human machinery. So the images on my screen are here, right? Just like those images are here, not there, right? There are a lot of things happen. And now think of AI. My claim is that AI is here in the air, right? And it is a causal mechanism on a space between me and the object. So it's a relation. And understanding AI means to understand that the relation is not from the object to the subject or the subject to the object. It's a relationship that changes both. So think of friendship, that's Yasuo's model, or you might also think of love relationships as the right way of understanding how you ought to relate to AI systems. So that's, I think, how we can get there. And Japanese philosophy of technology in general, being grounded in the history of Japanese thought, is much more naturally molded so that it lends itself to a type of modeling that does not think of AI as an object. So AI is neither a bunch of objects in the world. Objects in the world are there for AI, chips and so forth, right? But they're only part of AI. Nor is AI, some other mysterious autonomous force. AI is a network effect of highly complex multi-agent systems involving an economy. AI is not independent from an economy, not only because it's expensive. The fact that AI is expensive is a function of a larger multi-agent system that we need to understand. So that's my intro to these kinds of things. And maybe now I hand over to Yasso to give you a brief introduction to the V-turn, and then we can, and also maybe Yasso can introduce us to how KIP came into existence.
Thank you. That's V-turn. And so my philosophy, I call that V-turn. That's a turn from I to we. So subject of a unit, a very important thing. First of all, our somatic action. Right, I'm talking to you and walking, running, and my favorite example is riding bicycle. Every action we do, day in, day out, from the birth to today, from morning to night, every action should be collective action. Single action just illusion. That's returns idea. Right? And this returns idea is based on another turn. There are many turns. Marcus now just talking about emotional turns. Here's returns. Another one is incapability turn. That's the turn from capability, doing something, to incapability, cannot doing something. And incapability term is, incapability is a basis. That's a dignity, our pride, and our irreplaceabilities of human beings. And there are many incapabilities. But most important incapabilities, I call that fundamental incapabilities. Okay? I cannot speak Chinese, for example. Here's incapability. But Chinese people can speak Chinese by definitions. Okay? That's not fundamental incapabilities. Fundamental incapability is universal. Okay, everywhere. And no one can escape from that. In the case of Chinese, if I can learn hard Chinese or other foreign language, maybe someday I can speak Chinese. But that is not fundamental incapabilities. Fundamental incapability is simply inescapable. Whatever effort I or you would make, no chance to escape from that. What's that? One simple, clear example of that is incapability to live eternally. We should die sooner or later. No one can escape from that. That is very typical, existentially meaningful fundamental escapabilities examples. But here's another two. Those two are related to our somatic actions. One, I already mentioned that. Incapability of single actions. Whatever action we cannot do alone. If we can say, okay, this is something we can do alone, illusions. Right? Now I'm talking to you. In the standard view, that's a typical single action. I can talk to you alone. Just illusions. I need English. English is not my pure inventions. That is sort of collective inventions. And I should learn somewhere by someone to learn English. And to speak English need, of course, good breath, oxygen, good nutrition, many things. And that should be provided to me by many people's efforts, not only people's, many non-human animals, plants, non-life, natural environment, air, or many things, and artifacts. Okay. And what appear to do something to you is just collective action. I am very important, essential. Without me, there's no my talking to you, of course. But that is not enough. I am essential, necessary, but there are many other necessary, essential guys or agents in this world. They collectively make me possible to talk to you. So, based on this kind of observation, I came to claim that every single action is not single actions, but collective actions. And what is the subject of my talking to you? I am very important, but in reality, we. That should contain I, but many other agents, human and non-humans. So from this incapability turn, from the capability to fundamental incapability for all actions, we turn comes. Who is talking to you? I am essential, but I am not enough. So many diverse agents, all of them are essential, necessary, indispensable. Put all of them into one single system. I call that multi-agent system. And this multi-agent system is a subject of talking to you. So this multi-agent system should be called not I, because there are many agents rather than I, but that should involve I essentially. But the answer is clear, that's the we. So from I speak to you, we speak to you. From I do to we do. That's the first we turn. We turn of subject of somatic action, we term doer. And this we term doer can trigger many other we terms because the idea of subject of somatic action, that's quite central to many other things. Take some examples. One is a self. What is self? That's a big question. Philosophy or sociology, psychology, many others. And one standard answer is this. What is self? Self is doer. Self is the subject of somatic actions. Right? Then somatic action subject, doer, is now already we turned from I to we. Then by the simple calculations, what is the self? That's the doer. Doer is we. Then self should be shifted from self as I to self as we. Right? And doer or subject of action should be the sort of someone who should have responsibilities or the result or consequence of any somatic actions. If that brings out a good thing, subject should be praised, Nobel Prize, literature prize. If that brings out a bad thing, subject should be blamed, should take some responsibilities. So the subject of responsibility should be shifted from I to we. Then rights. Rights and responsibility are two sides of a coin. Someone who should have a responsibility should have also rights. Okay. Now unit or subject of responsibility should turn from I to we. Rights also should be shifted from I to we. Of course, my rights is there. Okay. I is always essential. Without I, no we. Okay, that should be something you or they or whatever. I is always there, but First and foremost, we should think about we rights. And within that, first, we can think of I rights. This kind of we first, but still I there, can be applied to the many other value talk. For example, freedom. There should be first we freedom, and within that, I freedom. Without we freedom, no I freedom. Similarly, without we happiness, we well-being, no my well-being. That's we done. And what is this we? Let me repeat. That's a multi-agent system that is essential for any single actions. That should involve me as a human beings. You are essentials. But that is not enough. Many animals are essentials. That is not enough. Artifacts is essential. AI or robot. Okay, so all of those many people, the many agents, some are plays a very important central role, others not. But one thing equal. Every member of we is equal in the only one point. Without that, no actions. They are essentials, indispensable. At this respect, everyone is equal. That should be the basis for the we terms ethics. Every member of we, human, animals, of course, AI or robot, should be treated at least principally equally in our moral considerations. And based on that, they should be given at least minimum but equally rights. Okay, many people said, okay, human rights is a universal. Any human should have equally that. That is enlightenment ideas. But based on this we terms, that's not enough. That's of course important. But all members of we should be at least given minimum rights. Animal rights, of course, but that is not enough. Non-animal, natural stuff, rivers, soils, ecosystem, forest, should be given rights. That is not enough. Even artifacts, AI or computers, bicycle, should be given rights. Okay. Rights or moral concerns should be totalized to all members of we. That is a we terms ethics, we terms idea of a universal or total rights. Then let me mention last point. Then what is the rights over table? What is the rights over computers? What is the rights over AI robots? We can think of human rights. That's the basis of this. We can think of animal rights. Many people began to talk about that. But how is the rights of artifacts, tables, computers, AI? Here is my proposal. That is anti-disposal rights. What is anti-disposal rights? That is anti of disposal rights. What is a disposal rights? I observe that is a right that is implicitly given to us, human beings. Quite implicit. But what is that? Okay, on the garbage collection day, yes, we can throw away my belongings. Okay, now it's very strict in Japanese societies. We should make some strict distribution or differentiation of garbage. If we made a mistake, I'm condemned by the neighborhoods, my families. Okay, this is not today's garbage. That is Wednesday or something like that. But we are not condemned when I didn't show any reason to throw away my belongings. I just put my garbage on the garbage collection point. No reason to be shown. I didn't have to attach some reason memos. Here's the reasons. That's why I throw away this garbage. No need for that. That implies we humans are implicitly given already rights to throwing away, dispose of my belongings, typically artifacts, without any reasons. Without any special reason, without any cogent reasons. I am entitled to throw it away. Just simply, I'm bored of that. I bought this, clothes, trousers, last winters. I just bored. So I just, throw it away. No condemnations, right? I just, even no simple reasons. Just throw away. No reason at all. No condemnations. That is, disposal rights, good or bad, implicitly given to humans. I think that too much. But that's not good. From the we turn ethics, right? So we should reverse that. Then we should give our belongings, animal of course, artifacts of course, anti-disposal rights. That's the rights, not to be disposed of, not to be throwing away without good reasons, cogent reasons. Of course, there may be good reasons. If my computer is broken without possibility of repairment. That's good reasons. To continue to use my computers, that's very bad for the environment. That's quite energy consuming, it's too much. That might be good reasons. But without some sort of a good reason, we humans shouldn't have any free rights to dispose of my belongings without any reasons. Any belongings, artifacts or not, should be given anti-disposal rights, not to be disposed of without good reasons. So that's the basis. Okay. On this basis, we can have a quite new, ecosystem, new ethical ideas. So let me conclude. That is a very important unit. That's a unit of our somatic action. That is a unit of very many other important things, rights or freedom or whatever. Each member of we, animal or not, human or not, living stuff or artifact, should be given at least minimum rights. That any human AI relationship, any human robot AI relations should be based on this kind of ideas. That's the proposal from WeTerms, and that is in a complete term, fellowship model. Gabriel mentioned, Max mentioned. That is all.
The bigger we can put it up.
Yes, you can turn. Yes, exactly. You can turn it off. Don't dispose of it, though.
No, it's just better.
Yeah. So maybe also before we open this to the conversation, a few words about our cooperation in the Kyoto Institute, right? So, Yasu can say something about, how the Kyoto Institute came about, which is a very unique institutional constellation, bringing together some of the biggest Japanese companies like NTT, which is, the biggest telecommunication company in Japan, Hitachi, Yomiuri Shimbun Holdings. So I don't know if you know, but Japan still has the newspapers with the biggest subscription numbers in the world by far. Yomiuri Shimbun newspapers is currently still at around 8 million daily subscriptions. So imagine all Portuguese roughly read the Yomiuri Shimbun. And then you have the Mainichi and the Asahi Shimbun, I think the second is also involved, and Nikkei. So significantly over 20 million Japanese still subscribe to sophisticated newspapers. which is a unique constellation. And so that's also part of the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy. And the idea is to bring together, cutting edge humanities, social science, and philosophy thought with industry and the arts to actually, design AI systems and robots. We can give you some examples of startups with whom we have been cooperating as well. So Yasu can maybe also say something about this because he's the co-chairman of the institute, and the other chairperson is Jun Sawada, the executive chairman of NTT, so the highest level of this quite impressive 84 billion revenue in dollars, to just give you a number, company. Yeah.
Okay, beginning with the KIP, the Kyoto Institute of Philosophy was established almost 2 years ago. It's quite new. But some years ago of its establishment, and Marcus mentioned Jun Sabata. At the time, he was a president of NTT. That's quite huge companies. Came to me. I'm a professor of philosophy, Kyoto University. And he came to me and asked collaborations between NTTs, huge telecommunication companies, and philosophers. And one result is establishment of a KIP. Soon afterwards, Hitachi came to me, and Yomiuri Shimbun, other big companies came to me. Why? This is my answer to the observation why. Now, so big Japanese companies facing the loss of values. Industry or many other business, of course, should produce valuable things. That's universal. Otherwise, no selling, no profit. They should produce something valuable for the people, human beings. Then, what is a valuable thing? What is a value? So far, at least in the Japanese context, there has been the clear answers from not heaven, from United States. If United States something, okay, universal human rights, that's good thing. That is, voices from the heaven to Japanese, industries, government, societies. When United Nations mention SDGs, you don't know or no. Okay, sustainable developmental goals. Every big companies in Japan, SDGs, that is the values. So we should pursue that. Okay, that's the 20th century, early 21st centuries. But now situation is changing. At least some people or top businesses in Japan came to understand that kind of a UN's, heaven's voice system is not sustainable. We need something else, but no one knows that what is something else. And some Japanese people came to feel that UN, that's very important. That's okay, good. But they need something more specific, their cultural context as well. They are sort of a cultural intuitions. Okay, that's not enough. Some universality, that's essential, but that is not enough. The two things to make value words is a more plausible, more intuitive to each of the people down the earth of the Japanese societies. They become to feel lack of value words. There are value words from UN, but that is not enough. So they need some sort of more intuitive, down to the earth, very closely connected to our everyday life. Value words. Who can do that? Answer is clear. Humanities. Okay. Science is about fact. Good. Natural science is trying to find out some natural fact, laws and regulations. Social sciences try to find out, discover, social fact. But on the top of that, we need values. Then who is the specialty of those kind of value stuff? Humanities. And philosophy, of course. That's why top business people in Japan came to me, and they're very eager to start dialogue with the business ideas, peoples, and philosophies. That's the starting point. And that can be, future or already reality in the Portuguese. That's my big question. And that is my missionary questions to ask your ideas, your situations.
Yeah. That's part of why we're currently also lecturing here, right? To see, what's going on in the humanities and social sciences in Portugal, and what are the connections to the innovation space and the highly dynamic, disruptive contemporary economy, with all its potential strengths and the shockwaves that you're all living, inflation, real estate, discussions about whether it's 25th of April or November. These are obviously all, highly relevant value questions, and they are interconnected with the economy, with, crypto stuff that's going on, obviously, in Portugal, nomads and the pandemics, etc. So, plus something as, there's an old and deep connection between Portugal and Japan, the oldest one, actually, the oldest outside economic contact of Japan in history is with Portugal. And so that's also something we would like to explore, right? So, what can the humanities also contribute to the innovation space in Portugal, whatever you think about it. But, we also just learned that FCT was shut down and is replaced by an innovation thing, right? So the question is, do they have an idea? Well, probably they don't. So maybe we can do something together, right? And AI, we believe, is going to be obviously important. It's here to stay. It's not going to go away. But, current investment bubbles might burst soon. There's real evidence that, there's a business case problem for some of the big US companies. But even if the bubble bursts, that won't mean at all that AI will go away. It just means that we'll get market shock waves, which then have consequences and repercussions also across the space here. So that's something we have been thinking about in the last days, visiting various agencies and universities here in Portugal to see what's going on. Yeah. So maybe we can open this for a discussion with all of you as well on all the dimensions of, what we propose today.
Too much.
Não,
Também pode ser em português, e assim vamos fazer uma tradução, mas...
I will start maybe. So,
Ah.
Because I think it's not so easy to have your input first, which is quite descriptive and
Yeah.
a certain idea of I would call the in between, although you say there's something. And I think we have philosophy of in between in Japanese culture and in European philosophy. The key idea, the key in Japan, and also, for example, I studied a lot Schütz's idea of making music together. This idea of listening and playing. I cannot just play, but I have to listen. So, and actually the music is in between, because there's no way it is my playing or my listening, but there's something else. So I think we have, I immediately think about diagrammatic relations in Perth. I come from Perth as well, so there's a lot about this. It's based, everything that is knowledge and experience is based on relation. So, and this is how symbols grow, this is how culture grows, this is eternal, semiotic relations, and that's why we can actually understand each other, and we have languages from other symbols and other signs, and we can import them, and we can use new combinations, etc.
Até ao jantar.
I think the we idea is maybe for me too quick to be on an ethical level, because it gives me a lot of blockages of problems, because I think there's probably much more to in a general idea of philosophy and of culture of what is the we idea instead of the I, which I think is much stronger than for me when you go directly to the ethical issue of laws, for example, which I defend as a philosopher as well a bit against a lot of, I would say, very fancy renovations of culture, because in the end we come back to the court and somebody has its rights and somebody has a body and somebody has its limits, and even if it's not just an I or an ego or something, but there's something about the individual that, or the individual, that I think we should preserve, and there's a kind of a struggle as well from coming from theater as well, seeing Antigone going out of the chorus and actually having two laws. There's an individual law and there's a common law. So I would always say in the middle is the problem and not between the I and the we, but that's another issue. I think the actuality of what you're talking about, the impact in society, the strong need for values, is something that is somehow basic. I would say is more urgent than any kind of philosophy we develop at the moment, and we are also developing with Filming You a community of European universities. We want to get scale. We want to we come from smaller countries and small budgets, and we need to be scaling up in order to get our students the best possible education. That means we have to connect and we have to be a we structure. And we're doing that in developing the European student card. We're one of around 20 communities in different areas of research. Ours is media, arts, and everything connected also to humanities, but also to arts and to social sciences. But the question of AI is, as you explained it so well, is really something that I insist that we have to be connected with as humanities scholars and people who are forward looking, because it is here to stay, independently of the hype. The question is, how do we deflate the hype and we push in the real debates? I think that is why what you're doing is so important, and I think we are trying to do that as well. Maybe not on the scale you already are. and the other question, I think the cultural question between Japan, Portugal, and mediate in a certain way from Germany.
Yes, in our case.
And I stayed, you went, and so I stayed here. Is something very interesting for me, because I think this is the future. This is the future that we don't want just to be the perfect professor or have a great career, but we are actually interested in how does the world work and why is so many things that we have to change, and we really need a new way of how to handle it. It's almost like the art of encounters, encounters of thinking, encounters of cultures, encounters of translation. As I said, I brought my Japanese-German translating book with me. The key is Leibhaftige Vernunft, is Ishiro Yamaguchi, which is for me the entrance in Japanese philosophy. But as I said, it's like we all need these kind of, doors where we enter and we relate. And so maybe this is all a little bit confusing, but I really think this is important. But we have to structure the different fields, because there's so many different topics, I think.
Yeah, maybe I can also say something on my take on ethics and so forth, right? So I think it's very important, what you emphasize, to anticipate how the AI space will most likely look after the next shockwave. The idea, and that's a mistake that many people, including, on the highest EU level and the military actually in Europe, are making, is the thought that, you now, as it were, need to invest in what's going on in the US, right? That's just a wrong measurement. That is like, wondering how you can copy the Lehman Brothers in 2007, right? That's not a great idea, right? You don't know exactly. I mean, there's real evidence that we get. We also work with Swiss partners. There's a subprime market in the big investments, and some of the investments that even the biggest players in town currently need to make are highly unstable. So they're shuffling around loans and so forth. So this what we see right now is going to break down. So trying to copy this in some way or, enter despair is the wrong attitude. We need to anticipate the future. And now, ethics might enter this discussion in the following way, right? So one thing that ethics can do for us, normative thinking, is to draw distinctions between desirable and undesirable futures, right? So like if you attach this to, you know, just desirability, survival, economic interests, etc., right? And think of ethics as just a meta-level way of framing questions of desirability, where the scope of desirability ideally encompasses at least all humans, and if you have a big Buddhist heart, all beings, right? But you think of what's desirable for a much larger set of actors, right? Then you might think of ethics as being about that, right? So ethics could be a guide to desirable futures, which would allow us to design technologies and make investments, including educational investments, right, in a space that is more than merely blank, right? So that's kind of an idea that we also share. Then ethics is in a way descriptive. It gives us access to the structure of the life form that we are, right? And then what we can learn certainly from Japan is how, we should have known this from Earth system science and so forth, but, that the human life form is embedded in ecosystems, causal ecosystems. It's not about being nice to the environment, right? It's about realizing that being human is constitutively tied to like ecosystems of this form, right? Just the right temperature, right? As you know, a really hot summer, right? So there, Portugal is still in a better position than say the Mediterranean. You got lucky that the Atlantic is cold, right? I mean, you don't want to be in Naples in August, right? Lisbon is fine and Porto better in the summer, right? But Naples is all close to game over, right? So, and there you see the nature of a multi-agent system. So, like one way of thinking about such projects is to create network of networks, as we call this, right, including institutions, to find out first what a common desirable future would look like. And then invest in that. I call this in a forthcoming book ethical intelligence. So, we need to build AI systems that help us do this, right? Because AI systems, if anything, are good at pattern detection and what is good for humans right now. Like even just an ordinary chatbot like ChatGPT is better at answering the question, what is good for humans, than most humans. Which is not to say that, we don't need humans, but AI systems are obviously much better at pattern detection.
So let me add, okay, I totally agree with Marcus' ideas, and nothing to be added. But if one thing should be added, ethical is always connected to the existential conditions. Right. And AI is so rapidly developing, and so rapidly enter our daily life. So maybe the next generations, today's children, are brought up with constant conversation or responses, dialogues, AI, day in, day out. That should be changed. Existential conditions of the next generation to come. Okay. Then what is our good ethical existential conditions? What is the violations? Good ethical existential conditions. That is a very basic questions. That is a question we should think about. And that is not easy questions. Right. So we have sort of now our intuitions, some intuitive ideas, what is a good ethical existential conditions. But we should make first it explicit. In a good way, simple way, verbal form. Then against that, we should decide, judge, okay, this AI is very convenient, very comfortable, but very bad for our existential conditions. So that is a crucial future. Okay, not merely goodness or not merely convenient, that is not enough. So we should choose existentially good AI, existentially beneficial AI-human relations. Then what is an ethical, good existential conditions, good existential relations between among we, that is the biggest questions, okay, all humanities should ask. And so society needs that. That's quite urgent indeed. And there should be no single universal answers. So existential situation conditions should be very heavily cultural, historical conditioned. So there should be many different answers. Each country, each culture, each generation should have its own answer to that. How to articulate that? That is humanities work. That is social sciences work. And this kind of idea should, version up two sides, society as well. So that was the case for Japanese society several years ago. Government almost officially announced to the national universities, okay, don't invest money to the humanities. Okay, most important thing, science, technology, medical stuff, something like that. That's the prioritized. But now the situation is clearly turned. The KIP is a phenomenon that. So people came to understand, again, existential things very, very much urgent needed. And who is to do that? Many people can do that, but primarily that's humanitarian social science. And that also, that is sort of a chance, occasions for the academia like us. Okay, humanity is very important. And so humanities discipline or, and academics should be based on very basic, training from the reading some text, classical or contemporary. That's the basis, no doubt. But that is not enough. Based on that, we should be more open, our academic eye or mindset to the today's contemporary society's challenge. So both, sides should be can be version up in a good relationship. And that happened in Japan. The KIP is one of the triggers. And that's why I and Gabriel come here to widen that kind of a double version up.
May I?
Sure.
Okay. My head is spinning because it's so much interesting points. But I'm going to keep to the ethics and to the we. And it's a short question, but I think you will understand what I want to mean, not to talk too much. First, a disclaimer. I think that ethics is the bonobo of all the subjects, of discipline subjects. It still needs a push of evolution.
Yes.
So it stays there.
Great.
For me, it's a primate. So now I completely understand what you want to, what are you trying to do with the AI, the networks, as an externalization of relations, but do we really, okay, so put the thing, a we always need a they, as an I always need a do, a you. So it means that the we is a stabilization of an identity, of a self-sameness through time. So when it comes to think about an ethical question, putting the accent on the we without movement or flux inside it, for me it's okay, I know that you are well good intended, but a we could be very dangerous in this sense. So if we multiply the we's, so imagine that the we's, okay, in the Western culture was the aliens or the Martians or the Germans, whatever. So, but these we's, from an ethical point of view, for me it's, okay, I think that we should come back to the Greek and to the Latin or to the Slovenian and take the dual, recover this notion of the, how can I say you and me at the same time? Because I think that the we as is a crystallization, it's a very dangerous crystallization. And okay, I understand it, but I don't know what you think about it. For me, I was thinking about for instance, for the Portuguese, in taking the we, not in relation to Japan, Okay, but the we, as you know, Frank, so very well, it's the indefinition of the we. We are always in a crisis. Portugal is a typical. So what you are applying is a very appealing notion for a desirable future. Because the Messiah is to come, Sebastião is about to come.
I know, a mensagem.
So very
I brought a message.
Yes, mensagem and all these things. So, the messianism inside the Portuguese culture is okay. It's not obvious, but it's inside it, and so okay. It's just my thoughts about, but very interesting. It's my I'm keeping. Okay, very interesting. Thank you.
So
Do you want to go first? I have this great input.
and your
Great stuff.
concern is quite right.
Mm.
Right. Okay, we is not everyone, right? And we should have an outside. Okay, but important thing, there are many we's, different we's, and my version or we version of we is agent or members that is needed for any single our bodily actions, somatic actions. And the important feature of this we is we cannot draw any clear lines inside, outside. We is not everybody's. Not everything in this universe can participate by talking to you now. That's exaggeration. There should be boundaries, but the important thing, we cannot draw clear boundaries. Boundaries there using big philosophical term, ontologically determined, but epistemologically underdetermined. We cannot draw the lines. So it's very bad thing artificially draw the line, say, okay, Mexican borders. Inside is we, and inside first, outside second. This kind of a message politically now very, popular in many corners of the world. That's the bad we. And there should be good we, bad we, just like a good eye, bad eye. And bad we is try to draw the clear lines. We cannot draw clear lines. That is the reality of we. So many political things, there are many clear line drawing activity. That bad we. That's quite contrary to the real nature of we. In that sense, at least epistemologically speaking, we should be always open. Clearly closed we, that is very simple phenomenon of bad we.
So let me first start agreeing with you on a very important point and then offer like maybe a way of thinking about how we can solve the problem, the bonobo problem. I keep saying this as well. I always say ethics is intellectually at this point below physics at the time of Kepler. Okay, so we are not yet Newtonian. Okay,
A good analogy.
right. So, and late Derek Parfit, right before he died, said secular ethics has barely begun. And by secular ethics, he meant something like scientific ethics. Okay, so we roughly agreed. Like ethics begins to agree in the last years, barely for over a decade, that ethics might actually be possible. We're kind of there, right? So that's, I think, the state of the art. And if you consult, like big book of ethics, be it, Kant, Hegel, or whatever your preference is, it's going to be bonobo level. Like the categorical, like the pandemic was quite fun in that respect, because at the beginning of the pandemic, all the ethicists came out and they're like, wow, cool, now we have the ethics, let's see, how long should we close the schools? Well, what does the categorical imperative say? Nothing whatsoever, right? So, how do you go from the categorical imperative to the question whether you should close the borders or the schools? Like, it doesn't give you anything. What does utilitarianism say? Nothing whatsoever. of course, as always, Peter Singer went for genocide, so he's like, well, let the old die, right? Or whatever, but or only few will die. That didn't work out either, right? So none of the existing frameworks gave us any respectable output for an actual ethical problem, right? So ethics miserably failed the pandemics. And then instead we had ethics committees, right? But ethics committees just means a bunch of people who make decisions and pretend like they applied ethics, right? So indeed, for that reason, so that's true. Now I think here's my hope for AI. Maybe with AI, we can begin to do ethics. For this, of course, we need a method. The method I've been proposing goes something like this, right? You start with what I call an evident moral fact. Like, don't throw babies out of windows because you like the sound of them splashing on the streets of Lisbon, right? So maybe we start there, right? We could say, yeah, we shouldn't do that, right? And then, well, don't do this to puppies. Well, also we shouldn't throw out puppies. What about goldfish? Well, goldfish is, still let's not do goldfish, right? And so and then we come up with other examples. Let's call them the obvious moral facts, right? The ones we don't even think about. That are part of the background stabilization of the human life form. They might be there for evolutionary reasons. For whatever reason, these things are there, right? Violence, okay, but not all the time and everywhere, right? So, even Putin's in-group doesn't throw rockets at everybody, right? At the Ukrainians, but not at just literally everybody, right? Not at St. Petersburg, yeah? So, there's some just stabilizing obvious moral facts. Now, if we can now define, and here we begin to have a method, an equivalent class from one situation to a similar situation, right? We can begin a method of universalizing, as I call this, also with Takahiro Nakajima, another Japanese colleague of ours, right? So now you have a method of universalizing, which is not at all like the application of an independent procedure, right? You just find patterns. And then you go to more contested cases, which look similar, right? So, if you can save a child from drowning, then you should do that, right? And then you go from there to, if you cannot shoot rockets at kindergartens, then maybe you shouldn't do that, regardless of who you are, right? And now you're already saying something contentious, because, at this point, some people might say, well, this country is shooting rockets at that country, and that's really bad, and this other country is doing that. Plug in your favorite examples from Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, wherever you stand, right? But obviously, we're not handling the cases even-handedly, right? So wherever you stand, one might think, well, in this case, it's kind of slightly better than in the other case. But the ethics that I'm proposing would say, no, right? If shooting rockets at kindergartens is bad, then there is no excuse, right? So, and then we could generalize upwards. And if we do this in very simple cases, those are all still simple cases, then with the help of AI, now feed the AI large behavioral patterns, cross-cultural patterns, right, that are in the data, then the AI can use the method of equivalence classes, for which we can find respectable mathematics, right, to then give us outputs that we currently don't even have. And so I think this would be, like a moral innovation lab with which we could begin, right, to move ethics into something, and I think we couldn't do it before AI because the data sets are too small and biased in bad ways. That's the social science problem, right? We all know social science is not value independent. The very description of the phenomenon gets values implicitly or explicitly into the picture. But with AI, right, we can at least bring something to the table that has other types of bias. I'm not saying it's neutral, right? And then we can compare, that's an idea that Yasu also has in a recent paper. If you have two biases, one human and one non-human bias, then we can find a type of error in our behavior that we didn't see before. So that's one research project where we can begin to move ethics, right? Now we will be moving, ethics will be going. At least you have a well-defined project.
Like a correcting machine?
Yeah, exactly. It's a trial and error mechanism. And for this, you can use precisely back-propagating mechanisms, right? That's exactly what AI systems can do very well, right? You give them data, and then they have a hypothesis of the data. If they don't fit the data with a gradient, they anticipate the next, part of the function. If the function behaves differently from the algorithm adapts to the actual fact, right? So that can be done. So we actually even have the AI to do this. We just didn't feed it the data and ask the right questions. So that's my project of the Alpha Buddha, and something like this. We just proposed it yesterday in Coimbra, the European version, Alpha Socrates. Not Joao Socrates, José Socrates, not that one, but the no Portuguese politicians.
That's
This.
a big guy.
Yeah, that's a big eye. So that's like one possible response, and then maybe the dual are like that. Interestingly, in Japanese, you can say we in many ways, like I. And one way would be to say watashi tachi. That's just the plural of I. Watashi is I, and tachi is one simple way of building a plural. But another way of saying is this ware ware. That's what Yasu uses, right? And that is kind of a dual as well. You repeat something. It is close to the idea of a dual. It's not a bunch of eyes. Ware ware.
I.
It's I. Yeah.
I exists and doesn't cease to exist. I is not swallowed up or eaten up by we. I always should remain as an essential member of we. Okay, that we turn doesn't mean the death of I. I is always there. So what's the difference? Before we turn, maybe we can sometimes think that okay, I exist without we. Naked I, using Kierkegaardian term, or I in the desert. I in the desert island, only I there. That is illusion. From the Wheaton's ideas, I there, but as far as I there, I doing something, always we. I can exist. I can do something just as a member of we. Whenever I am participant in something, there should be always we there, and consciously or not consciously, willingly, not willingly, all members of we are in effect support I. So I not alone. Naked I is just illusions.
And let me give you another element that Yasu also spelled out on the more formal level of the we turn. So like on the technical dimension of his view, there's something similar in the ethics that I've been proposing that I sketched, right? So think about, again, a situation, right? Ethics is about what one ought not to do in a situation, not what one ought or not to do simply in general, right? Because there's no answer to that, right? Ought I to save children? Well, which one? Right? Not all children. I don't have the time and money for that, right? But if there's this one child here, well, then right now I ought to save the child. If a child is falling down the stairs in building F right now, that's very sad, but I have nothing to do with that, right? So the situation determines what the duties are, right? So it must be situation dependent. Now, we all have an intuitive sense of a good and a bad situation, right? So for instance, when I picked the restaurant we ate at on Sunday, I had long considerations about what to eat with the Japanese friends, right? I did go for like aggressive bacalhau à la Guerreiro, right? Which first I didn't know whether we should do it because the portions were huge in the wine bar in Rua dos Caldeireiros, right? So I was hesitating. The wine outstanding, the portions too big, right? Service wonderful. I was imagining the dinner. Then I found another place which I thought would be perfect, right? They also offer a private space, which is more in line of the, etc., etc. But when I was reserving the place, I thought this is the perfect place. I could imagine that the waiter who worked there on the Sunday would be, annoying. The waiter was annoying. So I couldn't do that. So I was anticipating two situations, right? And I think I hopefully picked the right one, the wine bar. We did go to the wine bar, not to the other one. And what I'm saying is this, right? A dinner can be good or bad, right? And this is an objective feature of social situations. And what if ethics could help us to detect features that we detect intuitively, right? It doesn't, like you're in back then. I remember, I got really lucky that I wasn't at this famous Arrastão in Praia dos Carcavelos back then. Remember that one? I was about to go and then didn't, and then there was those I had friends who were there. They were like, we could feel something in the beach, right? Something was not right. And so, like, what if the good is about that? So it's about sustainable situations, right? And evil is about something that undermines the stability of a situation. Then again, we have detectable patterns, stability patterns, right? And we can easily imagine a type of eco-ethics that deals with that, right? So you can replace moralistic vocabulary, a thick human experience, which is a guide to the good, but you can replace that with legitimate scientific investigations, right? And I think you can then combine that, right, with this generalization method. But only AI can do this because we need data that is much bigger than, like a phenomenological description a la Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre needs 800 pages to describe a flirting situation, and that is misogynist the way he set it up. So not great, But, so phenomenology didn't do it. Phenomenology kind of says, we should do some, phenomenology has been saying we should do phenomenology, but they never managed to do phenomenology, barely, because they didn't have the data. Right, and now we have the data, so that's kind of the idea, right? You take a situation, and like that would be a way to help the bonobo do cooler things than just monkey around.
Like AI applied to ethics, like a dysphoric machine.
Yes.
Not an euphoric machine.
Yes.
Like you should
yes.
not kill, but a dysphoric machine.
Yeah. Yes.
Presenting options and...
Yes.
Okay.
We designed one system. I designed one system for a Cologne-based AI company. So we did design the Alpha Buddha. And we also conversed with the Alpha Buddha. It's a conversational AI engine. And asked it what the best design for the Alpha Buddha would be once it was there, right? And it said exactly that. So the system offers you a bunch of options. The lowest option is called coherence. So the system would say, look, yesterday you did this. Why do you think in a similar situation today you should do this other thing? So the first is just waking you up. It's like, you did this yesterday and today. The second level begins making recommendations, and then out of the blue, it's like, you should call your sister. It's like, what? Right? And then you start thinking, it's like, I'm kind of, and then you ask the system, why do you think I should call my sister? And then the system is, gives you A, B, C, right? And you can still choose, right? And the highest level is what we call plutonium, and it just gives you the absolute answer, right? And interestingly, plutonium, if you tune the engine to plutonium, it gives you pretty weird outcomes, right? It doesn't work. So the best is precisely a mix between coherence and showing you options. And there might be a reason for that. So I would think that this might be an element of scientific ethics. Namely, ethics is about our freedom. Like an ethics that doesn't present me with options would undermine my freedom. Right, is what Yasso calls a moral vending machine. You would be like a vending machine, right? So you throw €2 in and you get a bottle of water. That's not freedom. But so freedom there has to be like an option space. And I think ethics must present us with a bunch of almost equally good options at the end. That seems to be, but again, that's just a hypothesis about how the ethics space once it's moving might look.
And the important thing is that once the banner of KIP, Kyoto Institute of Philosophy, is multi-layered society of values. That means no single answer for values. No single answer for single societies, single communities, single individual. Maybe each of us have maybe different ideas, different value systems, and some of those values contradict each other. So I think that is clearly true in Asia, in Japan, for example. Japan should open its door to the West many years ago, to the Portuguese first. And recently, US. Maybe not better options. But result is, so Japanese identities, Japanese society's identity is quite multi-layered. Okay, different ideas, different intuitions coexist, even though they are not, and in the harmonies, good harmonies, contradict to each other. That is a multi-level of colors, still distinct. I think that's a Japanese society. And that can be, found also in the Portuguese.
Yes, that is very similar.
Yes.
It's not an analogy, it's even a simile. It's very similar. Portuguese.
Manuelismo. So I've been talking about that.
I see.
And-
Yes.
And we
Stratification is high.
Yes.
it's very high, and we found some nice examples just this morning
Social
in
vulnerability is one of the
Yeah.
lowest in the world.
right. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, we were talking about just this morning in the garden of Quinta das Lágrimas. As we were leaving Quinta das Lágrimas, Yasu recognized a Japanese flower and clearly said, "That's a Japanese flower, asagao, right?" Asagao, so morning phase. And then, and we speculated about how it might have gotten there, right? We got the answer at Gulbenkian Foundation. In this particular case, the wife of the owner of Quinta das Lágrimas goes to Japan a lot. So in this case, it's recent, but we thought it might have been Bernardo Japão, so like one of the Japanese missionaries back in the days who brought it. But there you see like stratification, etc. It's like the pineapples built into Mosteiro dos Hieronymus. Yeah, I think this is an important feature of Okay, but you get at least the idea, right? Where how this could be turned into a meaningful engine, and then of course all sorts of media theory, media practice, cultural theory, etc. Right, would significantly contribute in the preparation of the data sets, right? Precisely by identifying the blind spots, the excluded, right? The dominant construction. So all the tools that normally help us to identify what's wrong in a given frame, what's invisible, etc. Those tools would have to be part of the construction of a positive ethics. Otherwise, the system would be pretty bad, right? It would be kitsch. Otherwise, you get kitsch. Yeah.
It's actually the idea in Peirce is exactly the three normative sides.
Yeah.
It's aesthetics, ethics, logic. So
So
we can't forget aesthetics. If we forget
No.
aesthetics, we don't have the cultural background, the situatedness.
yeah, exactly.
And I'm sorry, also the phenomenology of it. Because
Exactly.
There's something
Yeah,
that
that's what-
freshness, we don't
Yeah.
know. It's just appearing to us, and
Yeah.
how is it appearing? We don't know in the beginning, but then we have the
No.
night, and then we can do something.
Absolutely.
So we need that possibility of newness, of iconicity, and so
Yeah.
on. And for that, we need the aesthetics.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Please, somebody else question.
yeah, we can take one last more, I think, before.
or
Yeah.
comments.
If not, we're also towards the end of the allocated time. But please get in touch with us. You know the projects now, and we are very happy to connect. Yeah.
Thank you.